40 cards? How we doing today, folks? Today we are reviewing the red cards that are getting downshifted in Commander Masters. Not a whole lot of them here. We're going to end up plowing through these pretty quickly. There's only 6 of them. If you haven't seen them already, I've put out the white, the blue, and the black videos already. Upcoming, I've got the green and the colorless combined into one video because there's only 4 of each of those. So I figured putting those into one video would be just fine. This one being a little shorter is also just fine because we do have 6 very awesome, very good, very wonderful additions to the Pauper format. Hold on. Wait a second there. Past Anthony. 6? Oh, man. 6. You see, little did past Anthony know that present Anthony would be interjecting and reminding him that there's actually 7 Commander Masters cards getting downshifted to Pauper. So I wanted to go ahead and interject as Anthony's editor, present Anthony, to share that card with you. So before past Anthony gets into his spiel, let's talk about Dwarven Hammer. Dwarven Hammer is an equipment. That means it's also an artifact. Costs a red and 2 generic. And it reads, when Dwarven Hammer enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 generic. If you do, create a 2/1 red Dwarf Berserker token and attach Dwarven Hammer to it. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has trample. And it also has the equip cost of 3 generic. I'll say a few things about this card. It does have a pretty good mana cost for a card coming into the Pauper format. 3 mana is pretty good. 5 mana is even better in some cases for a 5/1 trample, especially when half of it sticks around and the 3+ power can be added to another creature. As I mentioned earlier with the Renowned Weaponsmith, it does look like there are more and more equipment cards being added to the Pauper format. And with Dwarven Hammer being one of them, we might be seeing the birth of a new equipment-based archetype in the Pauper format. Alright, sorry to have interrupted you past Anthony. Video's back to you. This one was already spoiled. Already out there in the wild. Coming at you, originally printed at Uncommon in Theros Beyond Death, we have Blood Aspirant. For a red and 1 generic, this Satyr Berserker comes in at 1/1. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Blood Aspirant. Pay a red and 1 generic, tap, sacrifice a creature or enchantment. Blood Aspirant deals 1 damage to target creature. That creature can't block this turn. So we've already mentioned in the black video and even in the white video the potential for some sort of sacrifice deck, some sort of aristocrat style deck, and Blood Aspirant just feeds right into that, almost giving it a linchpin creature that benefits the most from the sacrificing effect. Kind of like a carrion feeder, but isn't also a sacrifice outlet. So this plus carrion feeder starts setting up the base for a wonderful, wonderful red-black sacrifice deck in Pauper. This creature even being able to keep opponents' creatures from blocking our large carrion feeders or Blood Aspirants whenever we get into the red zone is super crucial as well. So just adding a little bit of extra play on top of that and giving that deck another little bit of bonus, downshifting to common. Again, I mentioned in the black video that it seems like there's some sort of graveyard strategy or self-sacrifice strategy that they're looking to put into black and red in this set's limited environment. So Blood Aspirant being a great downshift to kind of give that archetype a linchpin and a larger creature to build. The next card I want to talk about is Gutter Snipe. For a red and 2, this Goblin Shaman comes in at a 2/2. And it says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, Gutter Snipe is not a wizard, so it doesn't 100% feed into that archetype we were mentioning in the blue video with Wind Rider Wizard and Murmuring Mystic both getting downshifted to common as well. But the Gutter Snipe does give us a little bit more incentive in the limited environment to play instants and sorceries and be casting those. Also boosting Pauper's ability to go late with those sorts of archetypes. The mono red decks right now are using a lot of 2-drop 1/3s that have a similar effect. So Gutter Snipe is going to be a pretty good addition to a little bit later game red deck a lot of the times, and may even spawn, with the addition of Murmuring Mystic, some sort of blue-red Spell Matters archetype. So I'm excited to see what Gutter Snipe does in the format and how it adds to the diversity in the Izzet and blue decks. Moving right along, we've got Cyclops Electromancer. This Cyclops wizard is a red and 4 generic for a 4/2 that says whenever Cyclops... I wanted to say Goblin Electromancer. You guys know where my mind is. Give me the Goblin Electromancer love. When Cyclops Electromancer enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to target creature an opponent controls, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. So this kind of giving us a Flame Tongue Kavu style effect for the instants and sorceries matters archetype. Kind of filling that out, especially at common in the limited environment, is very important, giving that deck access to some sort of removal that isn't necessarily just the burn spells it may play, the bounce spells it may play. Giving it an incentive as an ETB trigger on a creature is super awesome to kind of help fill out the creatures needed for the deck. Having the wizard archetype definitely will be useful in triggering something like Wind Rider Wizard. So that kind of just helps fill out the Spells Matter blue-red archetype in the limited environment and gives us a little bit more action in the Pauper format. This one being uncommon in War of the Spark just kind of tells us where the power creep level. War of the Spark was one of the more powerful sets recently printed, so seeing it getting downshifted to common from that set is kind of intriguing. I didn't mention that Gutter Snipe is coming down to common from Return to Ravnica at uncommon, originally printing. Moving further down the line, we've got Sulfurous Blast coming at us, originally printed at uncommon in Time Spiral. This 2 generic and 2 red instant says Sulfurous Blast deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. If you cast the spell during your main phase, Sulfurous Blast deals 3 damage to each creature and each player instead. So it gives us a little bit higher mana value, a spell to answer 2 toughness creatures, so that'll come in handy against something like the Spellstarter Sprite decks. But if we do find the pressure and we do find the time to do it during our main phase, we do get a little bit of bonus and 1 more point of damage to everybody. And I think it's super cool and super important to note that the decks that you want to play it at instant speed versus the decks that you want to play this spell at sorcery speed, that 1 point of damage is important and is well worth the sacrifice if you only want to deal the 2 damage, because most of the time those decks are going to want to interact on your turn, so being able to interact on their turn catches them off guard. I think this card is going to be an awesome addition to the Pauper format. It was an all-star back in its standard heyday, and being able to customize when you cast it was a great boon and definitely had applications in each situation. So definitely be looking for Sulfurous Blast moving forward in your Pauper format. Moving on down the line, we've got Rapacious One, originally printed at uncommon in Rise of Eldrazi. For a red and 5 generic, we've got a 5/4 Eldrazi drone. It has trample. It also says when Rapacious One deals combat damage to a player, create that many 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens. They have sacrifice this creature, add 1 colorless. So this card seems really cool for the Mirkwood Bats style archetype where you're incentivized to create as many tokens as possible and sacrifice as many tokens as possible. Kind of also gives us a little bit more incentive with the Blood Aspirant, giving us a kind of top end that still has a spot in the archetype, still enables what the archetype's trying to do and kind of pushes that game plan forward. So, super cool downshift. Very excited to see where this goes. Doing something like Exhume with this even seems super powerful if you can find a way to discard it early. Putting a 5/4 that puts mana creatures onto the battlefield for you. If you can do that super early, that seems very, very valuable. And the last card I want to talk about today, the last one that has been downshifted to common in red from Commander Masters, is Spite Bellows. This elemental costs us a red and 5 generic, comes down as a 6/1. It says when Spite Bellows leaves the battlefield, it deals 6 damage to target creature. It does have an evoke cost of red, 1 generic. So that means you can cast this spell for the evoke cost, but you have to sacrifice it when it enters the battlefield. So what that means for Spite Bellows is if you want a 6/1, you have to pay full price. If you want to deal 6 damage to target creature, well, you can do that for the low cost of 2 red and 1 generic. But you don't get to keep the creature. Something to note, though, is that this is in red, and decks like Jeskai Ephemerate have kind of needed something to deal a sizable amount of damage for a while. The way this plays with Ephemerate and Ghostly Flicker seems absolutely amazing. This might be something that the Teaching Tron deck plays as a 1 of or 2 of. It's definitely going to be something the Jeskai Ephemerate is interested in. For the low cost of 4 mana, being able to have a 6/1 and 6 damage to something that you may be able to deal 6 damage to another thing during your upkeep when Ephemerate rebounds, that seems absolutely bonkers. I did just play the Jeskai Ephemerate deck through League, so it's fresh on my mind. But Spite Bellows feels like it would slot right into that. It also seems like it would be good for an Exhume style deck or a sacrifice kind of deck where you play this and then you get your sacrifice synergies and still take advantage of the leaves the battlefield trigger. So a lot of exciting stuff that can come out of this uncommon from Morningtide now that it has been downshifted to common in Commander Masters. That has been the red cards that were downshifted in Commander Masters. I hope that y'all have found this video fun, informing, and I've added some sort of wrinkle to your brain as far as what you're thinking about doing next in the Pauper format. Take a look at the white, the blue, the black videos that are already up, and keep an eye out for the green and artifacts that I have mushed together into one video. That'll be coming out a little later. Until then, subscribe, hit that bell so you get those notifications. Like the video because it really does help us out. Until next time, folks, keep cooking.